Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. Standing on the stage today, I'm supposed to be sounding like I totally figured everything out. I'm an international school student in Shenzhen, standing here on a TEDx stage to present you my topic, Measured and Missed. By all traditional metrics, I should be delivering a totally synthesized 3-point lecture on how to optimize your future. But to be totally honest with you, I don't have it figured out. In fact, most days in school, I feel like I'm barely even keeping my head above water. But before talking about drowning in high school, let me take you to a time when I was actually on the water. It was a summer vacation of my 8th grade. My friend had convinced me to join a sailing camp in Plymouth, England. It was my first time out of the country since middle school. And in case you've never been sailing in England in the summer, let me paint the picture for you. The sea waters were cold, iced. It was freezing. And also, the place was constantly raining. It was totally miserable for middle schoolers. But at the same time, for me, it was absolutely perfect. I was in this thin, flimsy little sailboat, trying to navigate around the choppy waters between the islands of Plymouth. The waves crashed on the bow. The wind snapped on the sail so hard it felt like gunfire. And my hands were literally blistered from gripping on the rope for a long time. You can see me smiling over here. But that was actually because the photographer turned his camera towards me. But actually, in reality, I was deeply terrified. But beneath this terror was something else that I felt. It was a sense, an electrified surge of excitement. And for the first time ever in my life, I felt so undeniably, entirely alive. Out there on the waters, the ocean didn't care what my GPA was. The wind didn't ask for my IELTS score before deciding whether or not to capsize my boat. The only metrics that mattered over there were my resilience, my flexibility, my instincts, and how I adapted to a reality that was changing second by second. And then later on, summer ended. I came back to Shenzhen. Here's a picture of the night view of Shenzhen. People say this city was built within 40 years, which is incredibly impressive, isn't it? But have you ever seen a high schooler trying to go through the entire AP European history curriculum the night before the exam? That is what I call a true Shenzhen speed. We don't build skyscrapers. We build 5-page DBQs out of thin air, terror, and caffeine. Recently, I feel like my blood type isn't even O positive anymore. It's roughly 90% matter coffee and 10% the steam of a late night 7-Eleven cup of noodles. The next day, I walked into Starbucks. The waiter didn't even ask for my orders. She just looked at the dark circles under my eyes, nodded sympathetically, and handed me 4 double shot lattes and the copy of the AP language textbook. We live today in a bizarre ecosystem. We've studied so hard for TOEFL and IELTS that we've literally forgotten how to speak normally. If a foreigner reaches out to me in a street in Futian to ask for directions, I just freeze. My brain short circuits. And I end up saying, according to the passage, the intersection is located approximately 300 meters ahead. However, the lecturer disagrees on this. What about the extracurriculars? Don't even get me started. You know that you're a Shenzhen senior when you see your college counselor walking straight towards you in the hallway. And then you instinctively start listing all the activities that you've done recently just to prove that you're still a versatile applicant. I swear, Mr. Counselor, I'm going to start an AP Physics 2 club for hopeless AP students before next Tuesday. Please do not look at my GPA. I checked my school's club registry yesterday. We have 14 diving into chemistry clubs, 9 AI research labs, and 11 college-level math clubs. By this rate, in 2027, there's going to be more CEOs in our school's auditorium than there are actual employees in the entire district. It's funny, isn't it? We laugh because it's absurd. We laugh because it's true. And somewhere along the line, before we even noticed, we traded in our entire childhood for only a resume. We stopped doing things what actually meant meaningful for us. However, we replaced them with hard work on our school subjects just to feed the metrics However, here is the counterintuitive truth. Here's the part of the story that we don't often talk about. The grading system creates an illusion of control. It tells us that if we input X amount of work, we get Y amount of worth instantly. It turns all this terrifying, chaotic ambiguity of growing up into a neat, standardized test sheet. And it is addictive because it is measurable and comparable. We are seduced by this system, and I know I am, because as much as I struggle in the European course or in AP Lang, when it comes to math or physics, I just don't need to review as much. I naturally excel in these subjects. And let me tell you, the sense of feeling when receiving a perfect score from a teacher, it's just irresistible. And here's what the science actually says about our addiction to these metrics. And educational psychologists have known for decades that once you introduce a standardized grade, you often kill the brain's natural desire to study. According to the self-declamation theory, popularized by psychologists Decky and Ryan, hyper-focusing on extrinsic motivation greatly reduces intrinsic motivation inside us and creative thinking skills. By this, we prevent us from actually learning the materials, but rather memorizing a cheat codes for a game. Furthermore, if we are here today truly to reimagine about the future, we need to know what the future actually demands us. We are optimizing our entire generation on a metric that doesn't weigh much in reality. In Google's famous internal study, Project Oxygen, they've analyzed their best performing employees just to see what actually drove success. Out of the top 8 traits they listed, STEM expertise ranked dead last. The top 7 skills were all soft ones, including communication, listening skills, and possessing empathy. Furthermore, recently, the World Economic Forum declares that the absolute most critical core skills of future employees are flexibility, resilience, and agility. The grading system cannot measure the snap of the sail in Plymouth. It cannot measure the grip it takes to hold on the rope when your hands are almost bleeding. Furthermore, it cannot measure the internal battles that actually going on in your mind and dictate our future. Let me give you a perfect example of these unmeasurable traits. One of my best friends. If you were to look at his transcript, the school system has a very clear label for him. In the brutal language of academia, he is considered the typical academic failure. And by the metrics that we worship, he is falling deeply behind. However, this transcript is blind. The transcript is entirely, disastrously blind. Because when the pressure of all those AP exams were going to crush my ribs, when I was losing my temper and drowning into anxiety, it wasn't the student who achieved a 4.0 GPA that saved me. It wasn't my college counselor who pulled me up. Rather, it was him. My friend, the so-called academic failure, possesses a superpower that no bubble sheets could ever capture. He has an absolute mastery over his emotional regulation. He taught me how to control my temper, and he taught me how to maintain a steady mindset when the external pressures became infinite. He introduced me a very interesting psychological concept, which is the separation between the inner and the outer mental states, very similar to the self-determination theory mentioned a while ago. He showed me that while the outer state could be subjected to the chaos of AP exams, or college admissions, or maybe even societal expectations, the inner state could remain an untouched, tranquil fortress. He gave me the tools to survive. He navigated the path for me in the most unbearable days. And I acknowledge with every cell in my body how important he is to my survival and my sanity. Now, where are the AP exams for empathy? Where are the GPA boosts for emotional intelligence? Where are the perfect scores for being the anchor, preventing a friend from drowning? Our metrics are fundamentally broken. We are creating masters of passing tests, but leaving people unequipped to pass the test of being a human. We are creating masters of the outer state, while leaving the inner state incomplete. Well, after all, I'm not here today to tell you to drop out of your courses or to stop caring about your future. I'm still going to worry about my GPA tomorrow. I'm still going to drink too much coffee for the late night tests and homeworks. I'm asking you to strip the grade off its divine authority. I'm asking you to look at the person sitting right next to you and realize that his worth isn't encapsulated by the letter on top of his essay. I'm asking you to look at yourself in the mirror and notice that the moments that you are the most alive, the most brave, and the most impactful, or simply the moments that you are just yourself, are the times that will never ever appear on your transcript. Life is not a standardized test. It is rather the choppy, freezing ocean in Plymouth. And when the winds howl and the waves crash, the only thing that matters is who is holding the rope and who is standing by your side. Thank you for listening.